History is often a tapestry woven with threads of truth and legend, and few figures are as tangled in that weave as Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia. Known to the world more plainly as Vlad the Impaler, and most famously as the inspiration for Count Dracula, his story, frankly, is a terrifying and complex record of power, brutality, and national passion. He was a 15th century ruler governing the Romanian Principality of Wallachia at a time when Eastern Europe was the shifting border between Christian kingdoms and the expanding Ottoman Empire. His life, which spanned from about 1431 to 1477, was a relentless struggle for survival and control, marked by acts of cruelty so calculated they echoed through the centuries, painting him as a monster of almost mythical proportions. But to simply call him a monster is to miss the subtle details of his era and the desperate situations he faced. Vlad was a member of the Draculesti family, a line founded by his father, Vlad II Dracul. The name Dracul came from his father's joining of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly order dedicated to defending Christianity from Ottoman invasion. This legacy of conflict was like the air Vlad breathed from the moment he was born. He wasn't just a prince, he was a warrior prince, a crusader in a land constantly under attack. His methods, though undoubtedly gruesome, were often tools of the state, designed to enforce absolute order at home and project terrifying power abroad. To understand Vlad, we really need to peel back the layers of Gothic fiction and examine the man who stood at a crucial historical crossroads. He was a ruler who fought to centralize his power against treacherous nobles, the boyars, and stood as a fortress against the seemingly unstoppable might of Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople. His life was a whirlwind of violent reigns, bitter exile, and dramatic returns to power. The nickname by which he would be known, Tepes or the Impaler, came from a terrifyingly effective execution method he used on a scale that shocked even his hardened contemporaries. This man used fear as his main weapon. This article will take us on a journey into the turbulent 15th century to uncover the true story behind the legend. We'll explore his tormented childhood as a political hostage, his bloody path to the Wallachian throne, and the brutal campaigns that earned him his infamous reputation. We'll witness his daring defiance of the Ottoman Empire, dig into the psychological impact of his most horrifying acts, and consider the conflicting views that have painted him as both a national hero and a bloodthirsty tyrant. Finally, we'll trace the long shadow he cast on popular culture, understanding how the historical Prince of Wallachia became the immortal king of the undead, Dracula. Vlad III was born in the winter of 1431, in the fortified town of Sighisoara, in Transylvania, a world defined by conflict and shifting loyalties. His father, Vlad II Dracul, was a powerful figure, the prince or ruler of Wallachia, constantly navigating the tricky political landscape between the Kingdom of Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. To secure his position, Vlad Dracul joined the prestigious Order of the Dragon, a society of monarchs and nobles who swore to defend Christianity. But this commitment didn't stop him from making practical and often dangerous alliances. The world young Vlad was born into was one where loyalty was a commodity, and survival depended on a keen understanding of power dynamics. The most defining period of Vlad's youth began in 1442, when the Ottoman Sultan Murad II summoned him. To prove his loyalty and secure Ottoman support for his rule, Vlad II was forced to leave two of his sons, young Vlad III and his younger brother Radu, as political hostages at the Ottoman court. For years the princes lived in the heart of their enemy's empire, a gilded cage where they received an education but were constantly reminded of their subordinate status. They studied the Quran, learned Turkish and Arabic, and were trained in the arts of war and governance, all under the Sultan's watchful eye. This experience, frankly, was profoundly impactful. During his captivity, Vlad developed a deep and lasting hatred for the Ottomans, especially for the young prince who would become Sultan Mehmed II, later known as Mehmed the Conqueror. While his brother Radu adapted well, earning the nickname Radu the Handsome and becoming a favorite at court, Vlad was rebellious and resentful. He witnessed firsthand the might and complexity of the Ottoman military machine, but his observations were not those of an admirer. Instead, he was a student of his enemy's tactics, learning their strengths and weaknesses with a cold fury he would one day unleash upon them. This period, for sure, forged his iron will and instilled in him a harsh pragmatism. His years as a hostage ended with tragedy and betrayal, In 1447, while Vlad and Radu were still in Ottoman hands, their father, Vlad Dracula, and their elder brother, Mircea, were brutally murdered. They were overthrown and killed by rebellious Wallachian nobles, the boyars, with the support of John Hunyadi, the regent of Hungary. This news reached Vlad at the Ottoman court, leaving him with a profound sense of loss and a burning desire for revenge. His family had been destroyed by internal treachery and external political maneuvering, a harsh lesson that taught him trust was a luxury he could never afford. His path was now clear. He would reclaim his father's throne and he would make his enemies pay. After his father and older brother died, the path to the Wallachian throne suddenly opened wide for Vlad. The Ottoman Empire, always keen to put a friendly or at least controllable ruler in the important Wallachian principality, saw an opportunity. They gave Vlad military help, which let him march into Wallachia in 1448 and take the throne from the Hungarian-backed ruler, Vladislav II. At just 17, Vlad III became the Prince of Wallachia for the first time. It was a victory, but it relied completely on the help of an empire he hated. This reliance on Ottoman power was a bitter pill to swallow and made his position incredibly risky from the start. But his first rule was nothing more than a brief moment of triumph. It only lasted a few months. John Hunyadi, the powerful ruler of Hungary and the man responsible for his father's downfall, wasn't about to put up with an Ottoman-backed ruler on his border. Hunyadi quickly put together a military campaign and invaded Wallachia, forcing the young and inexperienced Vlad to run away. He was removed almost as quickly as he was put in power, and Vladislav II was put back on the throne. This quick and shameful defeat forced Vlad into a long and uncertain time of exile, a period that would make him even more determined and deepen his understanding of the region's complicated politics. Over the next several years, Vlad wandered through neighboring lands, a prince without a principality. He first sought refuge in Moldova at the court of his uncle, Bogdan II. But the political unrest that plagued the region followed him there. His uncle was killed in 1451, forcing Vlad to flee again. In a remarkable turn of events, he made his way to the Kingdom of Hungary, the very power that had removed him. There, he faced his sworn enemy, John Hunyadi. Instead of imprisoning or executing him, Hunyadi was impressed by Vlad's fierce anti-Ottoman stance and his deep knowledge of their military strategies, which he gained during his years as a hostage. A shaky alliance of common interest was formed. Hunyadi saw Vlad's potential as a valuable weapon against the Ottomans and decided to take him under his wing. He appointed Vlad as his advisor on Wallachian and Ottoman matters. This period was crucial for Vlad. It allowed him to bide his time, to study the art of war from one of Europe's most famous military leaders, and to wait for the perfect moment to reclaim what he believed was his right. His exile was not a time of idleness, but a long and calculated preparation for his inevitable return to power and the bloody revenge he planned to unleash on his enemies. In 1456, the political scene of Eastern Europe was shaken by the huge siege laid by Sultan Mehmed II on Belgrade. In the chaos that followed, Vlad III, with Hungarian support, saw his chance. He marched into Wallachia, faced and killed his rival Vladislav II in single combat, and took back the throne for the second time. This rule, which lasted until 1462, would be the one that sealed his infamous legacy. Now, as a mature and battle-hardened ruler, Vlad's main goals were clear: to make his power stronger, and get rid of all internal opposition, and make sure Wallachia was free from outside influence. He started by targeting the boyars, the powerful nobles he held responsible for the deaths of his father and brother. His revenge was not just quick, it was dramatic and terrifyingly symbolic. According to popular stories, on an Easter in 1459, Vlad invited hundreds of boyars and their families to a grand feast at his court in Targovist. After the feast, he ordered the older nobles and their wives to be arrested and impaled outside the city walls. The young and healthy ones were made to walk 50 miles to the ruins of Poenari Castle and forced to work as slaves, tasked with rebuilding it into a strong fortress. This single, cruel act effectively broke the power of the old nobles, replacing them with men of lower class who owed their positions and lives entirely to him. The message was clear. Loyalty to Vlad was absolute and non-negotiable. After crushing internal opposition, Vlad turned his attention to making his kingdom stronger. He put in place strict laws against theft and corruption, and punished even small crimes with extreme harshness. The punishment for most crimes, from lying to stealing, was impalement. Despite the harshness of these measures, they created an unheard-of level of public order. Legends tell of a golden cup left by a public fountain in Targovista, which remained untouched throughout his rule because the people were too scared of the consequences of stealing it. He also boosted the Wallachian economy by limiting the activities of foreign traders, especially the Transylvanian Saxons from the cities of Brasov and Sibiu, who had previously enjoyed great privileges and supported his rivals. This economic policy naturally led to conflict. When the Saxon merchants in Brasov defied his new trade laws, Vlad responded with overwhelming force. He led a punishing raid, burned the city's outskirts, and according to some accounts, impaled tens of thousands of its merchants and officials. He supposedly held a celebratory feast for himself and his men in a field surrounded by the writhing bodies of his victims, a horrifying scene that cemented his reputation as the Impaler. Through these carefully planned acts of terror, Vlad was not just punishing his enemies, he was building a strong, obedient state, using fear as the foundation of his power. After Vlad III gained complete control of Wallachia, he turned his defiant gaze outward towards the mighty Ottoman Empire. For years, Wallachia had been a vassal state, forced to pay yearly tribute to the Sultan, but Vlad decided that this submission would end. In 1459, he simply stopped all payments. Sultan Mehmed II, who was busy with other campaigns at the time, first sent envoys to remind the Wallachian prince of his duties. The envoys were also tasked with collecting 500 boys to be trained as janissaries, the elite infantry of the Ottoman army. Vlad's response was a calculated act of insult and defiance that would, frankly, make war unavoidable. According to a famous and very gruesome story, when the Ottoman envoys appeared before him, they refused to remove their turbans, citing religious customs. Vlad, claiming he wished to help them uphold their traditions, ordered his guards to permanently nail the turbans to their heads. He then sent the disfigured envoys back to the Sultan. This act was, in every sense of the word, a declaration of war. Mehmed II, absolutely enraged by the horrific insult, sent a commander named Hamza Pasha with a force of over 1,000 cavalry to either capture or kill Vlad. The Sultan had really underestimated the cunning and brutality of his former captive. Vlad learned of the Ottoman plan and set a trap. He led his force to meet Hamza Pasha near the town of Giurgiu. In a swift and brutal ambush, the Wallachian army wiped out the Ottoman detachment. Not a single enemy soldier survived. Vlad marched all the captives, including Hamza Pasha himself, back to his capital and impaled them. To show his scorn for the Ottoman commander, he impaled Hamza Pasha on the tallest stake of all, a grim honor reserved for the leader of the defeated force. This victory was not just a military success, it was a psychological blow aimed directly at the Sultan. Following this victory, Vlad launched a daring winter campaign in 1462, crossing the frozen Danube into Ottoman territory. Disguised as Turkish soldiers, he and his men moved through Bulgaria, raiding and destroying Ottoman forts and villages. He sent a letter to the King of Hungary, Matthias Corvinus, boasting of his successes and meticulously listing the number of enemies he had killed, breaking them down into categories of soldiers and civilians. By his count, he had wiped out over 23,000 Turks and Bulgarian Muslims, not including those whose homes he had burned. Vlad was not just defending his borders, he was taking the battle directly into the heart of the empire, proving that the Dragon of Wallachia could and would strike back. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople and frankly one of the most powerful rulers in the world, could not stand Vlad's open rebellion and his awful provocations. So, in the spring of 1462, he gathered a huge army, over 60,000 soldiers, and personally led the invasion of Wallachia. His goal was simple: crush Vlad, take over the principality, and replace the rebellious prince with his younger, more obedient brother, Radu the Handsome. The Ottoman army was truly a massive force, much bigger than anything Vlad could put together. Facing these huge odds, Vlad turned to the only strategies he had left: guerrilla warfare, scorched earth tactics, and yes, psychological terror. As the massive Ottoman army moved into Wallachia, they found, well, a completely barren and hostile land. Vlad's forces had poisoned the wells, burned villages, and even turned small rivers into swamps. to make sure the invaders found no food, water, or shelter. The Wallachian army, which was small and very fast, refused to fight in an open battle. Instead, they kept launching relentless hit-and-run attacks, often at night, then disappeared into the forests and swamps they knew so well. It's said that Vlad himself led a daring night raid on the Sultan's camp, trying to kill Mehmed II. Even though the attempt failed, it caused chaos and suspicion among the Ottomans, showing Vlad's brave boldness. But frankly, Vlad's most terrifying weapon hadn't been revealed yet. As the Ottoman army moved toward Wallachia's capital, Targovist, they came across a sight, well, of unimaginable horror. For several miles, the road was lined with the mutilated bodies of thousands of men, women, and children. This was the infamous Forest of the Impaled, a gruesome display of captured soldiers from Hamza Pasha's army, and thousands of other Turkish and Muslim prisoners. The number of bodies put in this awful scene of death was estimated at 20,000, with Hamza Pasha's rotting body on the highest stake in the middle. The psychological effect of this was exactly what Vlad wanted. Even battle-hardened Ottoman soldiers were sickened and disheartened by the horrible sight and the overwhelming smell of death. It's said that Sultan Mehmed II, a man not known to be easily disgusted, was so shocked that he admitted Vlad's skill in terror, saying that a man who could do such things was capable of, well, great achievements. Even though Mehmed kept moving forward, the momentum of his invasion was broken. When he finally reached Targovista, he found it completely deserted, the city empty, its gates wide open, offering no final fight, just this eerie silence. Mehmed, disturbed and truly unwilling to stay in this land of horror, quickly pulled back his main army, leaving the rest of the campaign to Radu. Even though Sultan Mehmed II pulled back most of his army, the fight for Wallachia wasn't over yet. He left behind a large force of Ottoman soldiers and janissaries, but this time, they were led by Vlad's own brother, Radu the Handsome. Radu's mission? To rally the Wallachian boyars, many of whom frankly were sick of Vlad's harsh rule and all the destruction, and hunt down his brother. Radu presented himself as a liberator, promising peace and stability under Ottoman protection. He had a charming personality, and yes, he was quite handsome, and he had spent most of his life in the Ottoman court. His friendly nature was a complete opposite to Vlad's terrifying cruelty, making him a more appealing choice for the war-weary nobles. As for Vlad, he had lost a lot of his men, and was running out of supplies, so he was slowly pushed back. The boyars, seeing that things weren't going well for Vlad, started to switch their loyalty to support Radu. In the end, Vlad was cornered in his mountain stronghold, Puanari Castle, and according to legend, during this siege, Vlad's first wife threw herself from the castle tower into the river below, so she wouldn't fall into the hands of the Turks, an event that has been made more dramatic in many Dracula stories. However, Vlad himself managed to make a daring escape. Using secret paths and with the help of local farmers, he slipped through enemy lines and fled north, hoping to get help from his supposed ally Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary. But yeah, the help Vlad expected never came. When he finally reached Hungary, he wasn't welcomed as a heroic defender of Christianity. Instead, King Matthias Corvinus arrested him and threw him in prison. The king's reasons were, well, very complicated and political. He had received a lot of money from the Pope to fund a crusade against the Ottomans, but he probably used it for other things and didn't really want to start a big war. To explain why he wasn't doing anything and to please the Sultan, Matthias put out a fake letter, supposedly written by Vlad, offering to help the Ottomans against Hungary. This fake proof of betrayal gave Matthias the perfect excuse to imprison Vlad. For almost 12 years, from 1462 to 1474, the terrible Impaler was a prisoner. The conditions of his imprisonment probably changed over time, sometimes strict confinement, and other times more like house arrest in Buda. During this long captivity, his brother Radu ruled Wallachia as an Ottoman puppet. And it was also during this time that those horrible stories about Vlad's cruelty, greatly exaggerated by his Saxon enemies and pushed by Matthias Corvinus to justify the imprisonment, started to spread throughout Germany and Russia in printed pamphlets. These early scary stories were the first step in turning the real prince into a figure of European folklore, a brutal tyrant whose name became linked with sadistic cruelty. The question of whether Vlad the Impaler was a national hero or, just a bloodthirsty monster, is one of those debates that never seems to end. For many Romanians, especially in the 19th century when nationalism was on the rise, Vlad III was recast as a heroic figure. In this telling, he's seen as a strong, decisive leader who fought for his country's independence and sovereignty, even when the odds were completely stacked against him. His brutal methods, while certainly acknowledged, are often excused as necessary evils in a violent age, essential for establishing order, punishing corruption, and defending Wallachia from the very real threat of the Ottoman Empire. From this perspective, Vlad's cruelty wasn't random, it was a calculated tool of state policy. His war against the treacherous boyars was a crucial step in creating a stable, centralized state, free from all the infighting that plagued his father's rule. His defiance of the Sultan is celebrated as a brave stand for Christian Europe, making him out to be a patriot and a crusader who sacrificed everything for his people. Stories of his strict sense of justice, like the tale of the untouched Golden Cup, are used as proof that he brought law and order to a chaotic land. To his admirers, he's Vlad the Impaler, a stern but fair prince who did what he had to do to protect the unity of his nation. But on the flip side, the idea of Vlad as a monstrous tyrant is supported by many historical accounts, most of which came from his enemies. German pamphlets printed during his lifetime painted him as a sadistic madman who enjoyed cruelty for its own sake. These stories say he didn't just impale his victims, but also boiled, flayed, and dismembered them. They even tell gruesome tales of him eating his meals surrounded by the dead and dying, dipping his bread in their blood, and forcing mothers to eat their own children. While these accounts were certainly propaganda meant to demonize him, there's some truth to his favored methods of punishment and psychological warfare. In the end, Vlad was most likely a mix of both personalities. He was a product of a brutal age, a ruler who saw violence as a key tool for governing his country and waging wars. His actions were undoubtedly cruel, even by 15th century standards, and caused a lot of suffering, but his motivations seem to have come from a strong desire to hold on to power and keep his country independent. He wasn't just a simple villain from a horror story, but a flawed leader trying to survive in a dangerous world. The fact that people see him as both a national hero and a demonic monster really shows how complex his legacy is, and how his story continues to be shaped by each new generation. After years in a Hungarian prison, Vlad the Impaler was finally set free around 1475. The political winds had changed, and King Matthias Corvinus decided he could use Vlad as an ally against the Ottomans, especially after Vlad's brother Radu had died. To seal his alliance with Hungary, Vlad converted to Catholicism and married into the Hungarian royal family. With Hungarian and Moldavian support, he returned to Wallachia in late 1476, and took the throne for the third, and frankly, final time. But this last reign was very short, barely more than 2 months. The same forces that had always opposed him were still there. The exact details of his death in the winter of 1476 to 1477 are, well, a complete mystery, with a bunch of different theories. One says he was killed in battle while fighting a new Ottoman force near Bucharest. Another claims he was assassinated by treacherous Wallachian boyars who hadn't forgiven him for his earlier purges. Then there's this more ironic story that says he was accidentally killed by his own men after they mistook him for a Turk during the chaos of battle. But whatever really happened, all accounts agree on the grim aftermath. Vlad was beheaded and his head was preserved in honey and sent to Sultan Mehmed II in Constantinople as a trophy. Final, undeniable proof that Wallachia's defiant dragon was truly dead. Yet even though Vlad's physical presence was gone, his story was just beginning to turn into a legend. German pamphlets in the 15th century had already made him infamous for his cruelty all over Europe. But in 1897 his name became forever linked to the supernatural. The Irish writer Bram Stoker, while researching Eastern European folklore and history for his new novel, found accounts of the Wallachian prince. The name Dracula, which simply means son of the dragon or son of the devil, and Vlad's reputation for bloodthirstiness, gave Stoker the perfect historical inspiration for his fictional vampire, Count Dracula. Today, Vlad the Impaler's legacy is this fascinating mix. In Romania he's remembered as Vlad Tepes, a complex historical figure often honored as a symbol of fierce independence and harsh justice. His castles like Panari and Bran, which is often marketed as Dracula's castle, are major tourist spots. But all over the world he's almost always seen through the lens of Stoker's fiction. He's Dracula, the archetypal vampire, the creature of Gothic horror. This fictional character has completely overshadowed the real man, making sure that the Wallachian prince who fought hard to be remembered as a great ruler will always be immortalized as the king of the undead.